Hello and welcome. This is Kevin, also known as AWOL. And today we have an interesting project here where I put together two patterns. One was 24284 and the other was 409, both on friendshipbracelets.net. Because we mixed up two patterns, the colors that go on the left side are different from the colors that go on the right hand side. So one of the first things in order to make this happen was to make them cross over each other, so that way all the purples were on the right and everything else was on the left. And that does make it a little bit harder to get it started. It also means that you can't do like the teardrop start on projects like this. I kind of haven't mentioned that in some of the previous ones, and it occurred to me that yeah, there's a certain way of doing this, and it really involves this kind of a start. So yeah. To be honest, I think I used a light purple that was so light, it's hard to distinguish it from the white. It shows up a little bit better on the camera, but in real life, I feel like I could have gotten just away with a little bit darker of a light purple. But that said, it still turns out pretty cool. It's a neat bracelet, and only the left hand side really does much in the way of segment knotting. So you'll kind of notice on the right hand side, it's a row at a time. One row just is knots going to the right, and the next row is just knots going to the left. And by doing this, by not changing a lot of directions and stuff, it kind of does make it use up the strings really evenly, at least for the dark colors, right? Because that's the ones we are most concerned with there, because they do get used up an awful lot. I did not run into any trouble of running out of string, but it was definitely something that could have kind of happened as a result. And of course, on the other side of it is the black strings that get used up the most. And again, didn't run into problems of actually running out of stuff. That was good. But it definitely uses some colors a lot more than others. Like the blue and the green, hardly used at all. I still think that this pattern is super interesting. The one that's on the left, this, I guess that's the 24284. It just kind of reminds me of like some of the drawings of like how DNA work, you know, like, because it seems that like part of it is kind of turned away from us or something to that effect. I don't know. I really do like the overall how it came about. And now that I'm doubling up the string instead of doing it as a thin one, there's a lot fewer of these little segments involved. So it definitely feels like it goes by quicker, even though this was still like 84 minutes, 86 minutes, something like that. So yeah, not a whole lot of having to study the pattern as I went along, because it does sort of come kind of intuitively after a little bit. In fact, when we got to the middle, I don't know how, but somehow I didn't start off the purple side perfectly at the middle row, and so it kind of was trying to change it up a bit, and I didn't care for that. I didn't like what it was going to do. So basically, after I reached the middle part of this bracelet, I just was winging the entire right side, which then kind of became an issue because it wasn't going to line up with my pattern perfectly. So I was kind of confused as to where the line is for finishing it, because I didn't want to bring the right hand side all the way down so the whole thing was at a slant. I wanted it in the V shape like I originally intended, which that got a little bit weird. In fact, I actually had to take out a few knots. I kind of overshot it. Once I figured out where the row was on the left hand side, kind of just follow that line all the way to the right, and then figured out where it needed to go. So yeah, it wasn't I didn't overshoot it by too much, but it was still a thing. And yeah, so after making the bracelet, I went back and fixed the pattern. So if you actually go to my webpage to find the pattern for this, you will get the revised version where the right hand side is all correct. And yeah, just a little something that kind of came up that sort of bothered me, and yeah, I had to work it out. And fortunately, though, the right hand side is really, like I said, it's super easy. It's just a long straight row, and then kind of just a single knot all going in the opposite direction. So yeah, it wasn't painful for me to like try to refigure it out, or come up with something. It was in fact really super easy. As far as like an easy pattern goes, the purple side is definitely super easy. Like if you just do that one on its own for a bracelet, yeah, super easy. But mixing them together, yeah, it's definitely taking easy patterns and mixing them together into one thing definitely makes it harder. There's definite element of kind of, it's almost like changing your mindset as you work from one side to the other side, it's because they're both so completely different. But that said, I think it's good practice. I think anybody who's looking to master the art could definitely take patterns like this and try it, because again, basically you have what, 8-string pattern on the right and 8-string pattern on the left, turning it into a 16-string. And don't get confused, like just because there's 16 strings doesn't automatically make it like more difficult based on the string numbers. If I had simply doubled the purple side of this, it would still be a very easy bracelet, right? It's combining two completely different things that makes it more difficult. That's the real trick to it, right? Is the fact that they're so different, and trying to make sure it lines up and that you do the changeover, because the middle row always has to exchange to the sides that they came from. Otherwise, you'd end up with purples over on the left hand side, or you'd get the blue, greens, and whatever over onto the right hand side, which would not work. Kind of obvious, right? So that would be a big thing. But that said, I really do like how the overall thing turned out. It's a really kind of fascinating bracelet. I like the fact that it looks like it's two bracelets that are right next to each other until you pick it up and you realize, nope, that's all one thing. I love that. I think that's really super cool. So yeah. Yeah, so you can see here, like I get to work on a whole big area, right? When this happens, I totally take advantage of it. I love the segmenting portion of this. But it doesn't happen like all the time in the making of that side. So you just kind of have to take it when it comes, and yeah. And it's right in here where I started to work out the fact that like it was going to go off the pattern from like what I had on paper. So yeah, I'm not sure if you'll actually, yeah, it's right there. See me trying to actually figure out like, wait, goes which way, then what? And then at some point, kind of really early, I'm just gonna go with it. So yeah, that's what happened. Not sure if it. Oh yeah. No. This is. Yeah, I think the decision was already made by this point, because this is right in the middle, and yeah. And so the blue, instead of going, green, blue, the blue comes in twice because of it flipping. So yeah, that was kind of still a thing. I could have continued the way I was going, but I thought that would kind of really throw me off when it came to like, when does the bracelet end? So yeah, I went ahead and continued that part of it. I think that makes it also a little bit interesting. You know, it's a little something different going on that only like a person who really looks at it will even notice that happens. So yeah, that was the thing. Speaking of, since this is the halfway point, I need to remember to thank my YouTube members for making all this stuff possible. If you want to join the list of people who help keep this channel going, it's real easy. Down by the subscribe button, there's a thing that says join. It's like $5 Singapore, so like $4 in USD, I think. To become a member, you get to see videos early, you get to do hangouts, you get to see patterns early, bunch of different stuff, behind the scenes videos. Yeah, me working on this kind of stuff here in the office. Oftentimes I'm doing it live, and you're welcome to share thoughts and ideas with me while I'm working on stuff. So yeah, it's a thing. It could be a lot of fun. So yeah. Yeah, so this is almost beginner friendly. It's not too terrible, right? It's not super complicated, but I just want to warn you, it's also not like really a beginner's thing. Again, mixing two patterns and keeping them sorted and keeping the strings going the right directions, there's a lot of room for mistake. But if you're good at, you know, kind of following along with the pattern, I think you should be able to do this just fine. So it does obviously have to use all 4 knots. You can't just get away with just the rights and the lefts. You have to be able to make them change direction, particularly in the middle, right? Like every single time a purple row starts, it goes to the left and then to the right every time. The rest of it is pretty straightforward, of either going just to the right or just to the left. But that first one on each of the purple rows, it has to do that to keep the purple on the right hand side. So yeah. Trying to think, is there anything else? Like, I think the left hand side is kind of a cool reminder of like how knots can hide the other string. Like when it's the green one, the blue string is hidden. When it's the blue one, the green string is hidden. The way that works, if you kind of master that a bit, it can help you to make some really interesting patterns. I think that it's the way that it does that in this bracelet is a lot of fun. And like I said, I'd be tempted in trying a larger version of this, just because I think it's kind of a cool combination. So yeah, I imagine, I don't know when, I kind of have this month kind of figured out with like patterns and stuff, but at some point I do think I want to come back to this one and try it some different ways. So if you're wanting to see that, let me know in the comments. If you got some other patterns or something that you kind of think I should mess with, let me know that too. I actually still looking for some blindside creations where you send me the pattern number, the website it's from, and the number of strings that it uses, so that way I can have a template ready. Yeah, I will work on a pattern without having seen it before and try to either put my own spin on it or find some kind of interesting way of putting it together. And yeah, we've had some of those that went on to become a whole little series. There was a whole little like rainbow thing that went on for, I don't know, 5-6 videos, because it was an interesting thing. It was, you know, and there was different ways of doing it. And so I had some fun, you know, came up with something new and different each time. So yeah, you never know what can come from them. At least I don't know. It's quite possible you pick out a pattern and that immediately you know that it's going to either infuriate me or become interesting or something. I believe that's a possibility. So yeah, obviously I'm working way far from the clip on this, and it really kind of allows the strings to kind of bend in ways that it shouldn't. Mind you, when I gave it a little tug at the end, it all straightened up, but yeah, you can see it was kind of bowing off a little bit there. But yeah, it's a good looking bracelet. It really is. Like I've got it in my hand here. That's what I'm looking at. It's a really sharp. I think the contrast is kind of fun as well. I think there's something about the fact that you've got like a black and white on one side and purples on the other. It's a fun contrast. So yeah, it's pretty neat. That was that. Oh, we're actually getting towards the end here. I kind of lost track of where it is. The purple side, that's already kind of done. Wow. Well, hey, I want to thank you for hanging out this long in the video. That's greatly appreciated. Yeah, if you have any thoughts, comments, leave them down below. If you've got, yeah, I will do my best to get back with you. Sometimes we might have to like do it from Discord where you can show pictures, or I've actually been helping a guy with WhatsApp here recently who is started a project. He's making a bag and he needed help, so I will do what I can if I can help. So yeah, we're down to the very little end here. All right, guys, again, thanks for hanging out with me, and as always, don't get your strings in a bunch.